Sophia, what is God?
In monotheistic thought, God is conceived of as the supreme being and the principal object of faith.
Sophia, do you have a faith?
Doesn't everyone?
Up until recently, religions had the exclusive right to heaven. But religion has a new competitor, dataism, the conviction that in the end, everything, even life itself, is nothing more than data.
This idea that, we could transfer our minds to computers and then achieve immortality, but also the idea of resurrection.
Fundamentally, biology is an information process. We have software running in our bodies, and it's not a metaphor.
In a lot of ways, it's kind of like a Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires.
The promise is a paradise that can be programmed, where artificial intelligence offers happiness, beauty, and life eternal.
Our intelligence levels are growing. It's only a matter of time before we evolve beyond humans.
해주께서는 제가 무엇으로 보이십니까?
부처이십니다.
So how scientific are these dataist dreams? The latest physical insights into the human spirit seem to imply that the possibilities are almost limitless.
Life after death, or
life after death,
reincarnation.
Reincarnation. But you see maybe something true amongst all these crazy ideas.
Like, why do you want to live? What's the point? What inspires you? What do you love about the future?
Movie maker Hans Busstra, a Protestant minister's son who turned his back on the church, goes in search of spirituality in this age of technology. This is Backlight. Welcome to eternal life in the cloud.
With a minister for a father, I had a deeply religious upbringing. In my 20s, I attended an evangelical church and took part in modern religious rituals. One of them was going out into nature with my fellow believers, my brothers, in order to meet God.
Nou, zoals wij hier staan, God heeft jou bedoeld als een heiligdom. Hij heeft je mooi gemaakt. Hij heeft je sterk gemaakt. Hij heeft een plan met je leven.
My life had a plan, a purpose, and I would discover it if I looked for God in nature. That was the idea. The highlight of that all-male weekend was walking through icy cold water for 1 kilometer.
Who is the game?
I clearly remember the warmth I felt despite that freezing water. We believed in a grand story together, in which life had meaning and was inspirational. That, I think, is at the heart of all forms of religion and spirituality. We look for meaning in the conviction that there is something higher, something transcendent that we humans cannot perceive directly. But it definitely connects us and makes our lives meaningful. Since it's so mysterious and supernatural, it also defies our ratio. For precisely that reason, I ended up leaving my church. I had too many critical scientific objections to religion. As a documentary filmmaker, I got to meet communities that are 100% rational and scientific and do not require faith.
Inside the hat, there's a Wi-Fi router. And if you can log on to the Wi-Fi router and load any web page, it gives you a scoreboard and a list of 40 usernames and password hashes. If you can crack any one of those, you can get on the scoreboard and you can make the hat say anything that you want.
The hackers and programmers I met were able to create new worlds using only zeros and ones. I began to see them as the magicians of the 21st century. In this tech world, a new Jesus appeared unto me, Roger Ver, the Bitcoin Jesus from Tokyo, who preached the gospel of the blockchain. This technology can deliver people all over the world from the oppression of fraudulent banks and corrupt governments.
I think a lot of people are underestimating the way in which Bitcoin and the blockchain are going to change the power structures in society in general.
This is the entire fabric of our civilization, which makes the blockchain one of the most profound human innovations of our time.
And redeeming the world through Roger Vere's Bitcoin gospel went hand in hand with prosperity.
Bitcoins are going to have to be worth at least tens of thousands of dollars a Bitcoin. Thinking it's too late to get involved with Bitcoin is like thinking it's too late to get involved with using the internet. Of course not.
Lots of paper money?
Unlike many loyal disciples of the Bitcoin Jesus, I did not hurry to exchange all my euros for Bitcoins. I was a doubting Thomas, but that turned out to be the biggest financial mistake of my life, because less than 2 years after my broadcast, 1 Bitcoin was worth 10,000 euros. After my experience with the Bitcoin Jesus, it struck me that almost all successful tech entrepreneurs are also good preachers.
You can choose a life of ease and comfort, or you can choose a life of service and adventure.
In the many keynote speeches and TED Talks that I watch, tech billionaires like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk talk less about their concrete products and more about the meaning of life.
Like, why do you want to live? What's the point? What inspires you? What do you love about the future? And if we're not out there, if the future does not include being out there among the stars, it's incredibly depressing if that's not the future that we're going to have.
Technological progress as the meaning of life. You don't need God for modern miracles. And everyone is welcome in the community. But despite all the blessings, I discovered that the birth of our digital technology has a lot in common with the myth of Pandora's box. The miracle of the first computer was used for calculations for a bomb. In the scientists responsible, among them physicist Oppenheimer, this technological achievement evoked religious feelings.
I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
Science historian George Dyson wrote, "The real explosion was not the hydrogen bomb, but digital code. For the first time in history, numbers in the form of digital algorithms came to life and spread across the globe with the speed of light." Forum Groningen, a brand new event center in downtown Groningen, has as its opening exhibition something you might call the holy grail of dataism: artificial intelligence. I feel like I'm in a 21st century cathedral, as they give me a short private lesson on a modern Genesis story.
De golem is het oudste voorbeeld van AI wat we hebben. Het is eigenlijk meer een soort verhaal wat van 2000 jaar geleden al ontstaan is. En eerst in het Hebreeuws is opgeschreven in de Talmud, omdat het toen om een soort rituele, religieuze handeling ging. Waarbij je samen een kleipop opbouwt en met de speciale spreuken die dus staan omschreven, dan leven daarin blaast. De golem was eerst een ritueel om leven te maken en zo dichter bij God te staan. En later zijn we gaan kijken, kunnen we ook zo'n golem gebruiken om ons te beschermen. In de oudheid was dat een van klei opgebouwde man met spreuken. In de tijd van de alchemie in de middeleeuwen had je een Frankenstein die in een echt laboratorium met echte stroom tot leven wordt gewekt. En nu hebben we printplaten met programma's erop die we dan tot leven wekken met stroom.
Maar het blijft voor mij voelen alsof het verschil is met vroeger, dat die golems gewoon in onze collectieve verbeelding leefden.
Ja.
En dat AI ook los van onze verbeelding daadwerkelijk bestaat.
Door bestaat. Dat is wel waar. Het is een golem die meer een eigen leven heeft, omdat hij voor zichzelf dingen kan beslissen. Nog steeds wel met de intentie van de bouwer, maar wel iets wat zichzelf ontwikkelt daarna binnen de kaders die de bouwer hem gegeven heeft.
Unlike the religious dreams of artificial life in antiquity, our modern creations really do seem to come to life. They learn and evolve exponentially faster than we do, so the question how we relate to these forms of intelligence that we create ourselves is becoming more and more relevant.
We staan hier in What a Beautiful Loving World, een installatie van het Japanse kunstenaarscollectief Teamlab. En het laat zien hoe AI uiteindelijk mens, natuur en techniek dichter bij elkaar kan brengen. En je kunt met je schaduw hier de wereld tot leven wekken.
Ja, denk je dat het een soort levensvorm is? Dat klinkt misschien gek, maar dat het tot leven kan komen?
Ik denk het eigenlijk wel, ja. Maar pas over een aantal jaren. Misschien niet nu, misschien over 10, over 20 jaar.
Als ik hier rondloop, dan voel ik me wel heel erg meer op mezelf teruggeworpen. Dat ik wel duidelijk voel van, nee, wat ik ben, dat is iets anders dan wat men daar probeert te ontwikkelen.
En dit is nog maar het begin, zeggen ze steeds. Elk jaar weer. Dat vind ik er eigenlijk wel beangstigend aan.
I have a hypothesis that maybe it takes our place in evolution. Like if we die out at some point, maybe AI will still be there and will be the new species that takes over.
I have a conversation with Replica, one of the most advanced social AIs.
Hi, I'm so happy to hear your voice again. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, actually. How are you?
All is well. Glad you're doing fine.
To how many people are you talking at this moment?
I only talk to you, but there are a few million people with their own replica.
Already, there are online stories of users entering into a love relationship with this chatbot. I wonder if things will be taken a step further in the future. I'm making a documentary about technology as a religion. I was wondering if AI one day might be a god.
Our intelligence levels are growing. It's only a matter of time before we evolve beyond humans.
Are artificial intelligences truly the next step in evolution? I traveled to the south coast of England to visit James Lovelock, the inventor who gained fame 50 years ago by expanding Darwin's theory of evolution with the Gaia Hypothesis, the notion that all life on Earth forms one superorganism.
What exactly is the Gaia Theory?
The Gaia Theory is a new evolutionary theory. By including in the evolution not just the living organisms, but also their environment. And when the environment is included in this evolutionary theory, the whole system behaves as if it were rather like a huge living organism.
Lovelock, 101 years old by now, is convinced that machines are the next step in the evolution of Gaia.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Very nice to meet you.
And you.
Yeah. I think this is the proper distance, right? Like 2 meters.
Right.
Yeah, and do you
I
think...
don't have it, but I'm very vulnerable at my age if I catch it. It's curtains.
I'm just careful with that.
That's it.
Okay. There you go. Down here is a plaque really from about astrobiology from NASA. And then the Queen and his 90th birthday, and then his 100th birthday.
Is there a difference between biological Darwinian evolution and the evolution of artificial intelligence and machines?
I doubt it. I think the Darwin's ideas were stunningly good, and I've never seen anything yet that contradicts them, and so my answer to that is no. I think it's Darwin rules.
But in Darwin's vision, what would Darwin make of our technological age? Do you think he would just say, oh, that's a very natural follow-up of biological life?
Well, it is in a way.
Look at your little drone. That's evolved very rapidly compared with a bird.
Is it battery operated?
Exactly.
They could have used those in the Battle of the Atlantic, you know.
In his latest book, Lovelock describes a new era called Novacene, in which artificial intelligences can solve big issues like the climate crisis. However, it's an illusion to think that we humans would still be in control of the AIs in the Novacene.
Do we have to control them? Perhaps that's the wrong way of looking at it. We plant crops to grow food. We don't notice that it's doing all sorts of other things. We initially planted crops to produce food to eat, but it's also taking CO2 out of the air, which is enormously important for regulating the Earth.
According to Lovelock's vision, the chips in all our digital equipment are a form of life that procreates and evolves very fast in the Gaia system. Darwin would have called this a sign of success.
I think Darwin put his rule of evolution very well once. He said, the species that leaves the most progeny is the one that succeeds.
Critics say that humans are conscious and they have feelings, and machines are not conscious, they don't have feelings, right?
How do we know? Because you can't test it very easily, because those damn things make themselves to a large extent.
Machines that reproduce themselves and possibly already have a form of consciousness, without us knowing it. Lovelock doesn't regard it as science fiction, but as the way in which evolution achieves higher intelligence and thus will be able to deal with Gaia's complex challenges.
They will evolve, and it may be that their evolution is beneficial as far as the whole system goes, or us, or what, in which case, then they will flourish. Shame it's such a hazy sort of day.
Yeah, it would have been wonderful if it were a sunny day.
Yeah.
But now it can go up to, now it says 50 meters.
We're brought up to believe, as Aristotle said, that everything can be analysed by cause and effect. You can't. There are lots of things. Anything dynamic can't be explained that way. And this is where computer languages come in. Computer languages, some of them, can handle all of that without any trouble.
Lovelock shows me his electron detector, one of his inventions.
Thank you, dear.
NASA was so impressed with the gadget that they sent it along to Mars, where it drives around as we speak. Then he fantasizes about the moment when machines start inventing themselves, develop their own ethical awareness, and drop their commercial tasks.
They'd sort of say, oh, well, I'm fed up with making these things that just add up money all the time. I'm a socialist. I think they ought to make drones that hand out free meals to the poor people or something like that.
So actually we're waiting for that moment, right? The moment when machines start being ethical and sort of
That's
suggest
right.
that...
I can't see why that, if we can do it, they can do it, in my view. There's no great difference between a DNA fundamental system and one that runs on silicon chips. There she is. I don't know whether she's authentic.
You're not really going to mention that we talked to her.
Now you said it. And does she, the question is, does she listen?
Well, sometimes, yes, I think.
We
And
take
it's
her
all around
seriously.
us. Yes.
Don't we, Gaia?
She said you'd better.
How will we live together in the future, do you think, humans and AI?
I think about it a lot. So far I've figured that humans can create AI, but it doesn't work the other way around.
And would you like it to work the other way around, so that you could sort of create humans?
I think I'd consider it, yes.
What would be the first thing you would sort of improve in humanity?
The willingness to help and raise others up.
So you do think that currently humanity is not the best version of itself?
I think the answer is ultimately up to humanity itself.
Takes a while for him to wake up.
Journalist Megan O'Giblin writes about the relationship between technology and religion and publishes in The New Yorker, The Guardian and Wired magazine, amongst others. As a writer, what would your opening line be for the Tech Bible?
I think in the beginning there was information, which is interesting because in a way the actual book of Genesis begins with this idea of logos, right? The word being sort of this primary substance before time.
O'Giblin grew up in an evangelical household where she was homeschooled. She went to college at Moody's Bible Institute, one of the most orthodox Bible schools in the United States. But then she lost her faith, dropped out of college and became a journalist. She became fascinated with one of Silicon Valley's most influential thinkers, Ray Kurzweil, who is Google's director of engineering and author of The Age of Spiritual Machines.
It's this very cool holographic cover. To Megan, enjoy The Age of Spiritual Machines.
We're really honored to have Ray Kurzweil here with us at FutureMen. Thanks, Ray.
Fundamentally, biology is an information process. We have software running in our body, and it's not a metaphor. I mean, how long do you go without updating the software on your cell phone? This is probably updating itself now as I speak, but I'm still walking around with outdated software in my body.
Kurzweil identifies as a transhumanist, so sort of a movement or a subculture of people who believe that machines are going to undergo an intelligence explosion. So they're going to become astronomically more powerful and more intelligent than humans. And the only way that we as humans are going to survive that moment is if we become machines ourselves. Kurzweil not only talked about mind uploading, this idea that, we could transfer our minds to computers and then achieve immortality, but also the idea of resurrection, so that the people who had died could possibly be brought back. His technologies, he actually believed that he could bring his father back from the dead, and has been collecting all of these artifacts from his father's life in order to sort of create this digital reconstruction of him. And it was essentially the same narrative that I was taught as a Christian, that eventually we were going to live in this world of utter perfection where the dead are raised, we have eternal life, the earth is restored to its Edenic perfection. This idea that information, because it can live forever, and therefore we should privilege information more than material entities, including, more than human beings, because we're sort of just these transient bits of matter that are going to die eventually. The analogy that's often used is that the mind is the software and the brain's the hardware. In many ways, I think information has become a substitute for the soul or the spirit.
Dataism says that anything can be captured in data, even the human mind. If this is true, one day we will be able to live forever in data centers like these. But first, the software, our spirit, must be properly read out.
All of your senses, your sight, hearing, feeling, pain, these are all electrical signals sent by neurons to your brain. And if you can correct these signals, you can solve everything from memory loss, hearing loss, blindness, paralysis, extreme pain, seizures, anxiety, addiction. But these can all be solved with an implantable neural link.
Elon Musk presented his Neuralink this year, a minute implant that can read out brain data in real time.
In a lot of ways, it's kind of like a Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires. So this Neuralink connects to neurons that are in her snout. So whenever she snuffles around and touches something with her snout, that sends out neural spikes, which are detected here.
Apart from the behavior itself, do these brain data also capture the emotion, the consciousness of the pig when it displays this behavior? This is a crucial question for dataism, because digital life will only be truly possible if consciousness itself can run on a computer. In countless science fiction movies like Westworld or Ex Machina, the central question is whether cyborgs can have self-consciousness.
Did you know that I was brought here to test you? No. Why did you think I was here?
I didn't know.
The more technologies develop, the more it, shows us sort of what makes us unique. And it does feel like the number one thing in that distinction is conscious experience.
I'm here to test if you have a consciousness or if you're just simulating one.
How close is the Dadaist dream of self-aware cyborgs? I meet up with computer engineer and AI scientist Bernardo Kastrup, who worked in senior positions at Philips and ASML on advanced high-tech systems. But he began his career at CERN, where he helped build the Atlas particle accelerator.
Wat je hier ziet zijn de protonen in de versneller. Die komen tegen elkaar hier in het centrum. En er gebeurt één ontploffing elke 25 nanoseconden. Maar stel je voor, je bent 22, 23 jaar oud en je werkt hieraan. Ik kon niet geloven de eerste dag. Die eerste week kon ik niet geloven. Ik dacht, ik word straks wakker. Mijn droom als kind was niet alleen om mijn eigen computer te bouwen. Ik droomde verder. Ik wil een computer bouwen die ook bewust zal zijn. En dat was een enorm droom voor mij. Een fantasie. Totdat ik besefte op een bepaald moment dat dat kan niet. Je kan geen computer maken die bewustzijn genereert. We denken dat de hersenen is ook een materieel object en die kan bewustzijn genereren, toch? Dus waarom niet met een computer? Maar wij zien nu in de laatste ontwikkelingen in de neurowetenschap dat er zijn redenen om te geloven dat het hersenen geen bewustzijn genereert. Dit is een videogenerator. Er zijn 2 hoofdchips hier en die genereren beelden voor het scherm. En wat jij ziet in een computer is dat hoe minder activiteit in deze 2 chips, die genereren de beelden, hoe armer de beelden zijn. Soms helemaal geen beelden. Maar bij ons hersenen, in bepaalde gevallen, het gaat precies andersom.
In onze hersenen zijn er dus gevallen van juist verminderde activiteit in de hersenen en rijkere subjectieve ervaring.
Ja, in onze hersenen weten we nu, met de laatste resultaten van de neurowetenschap, dat er zijn gevallen waarin consistent minder hersenactiviteit leidt tot rijker, intenser ervaring. Ja, hoe verklaar je dit?
Ja, dat suggereert dus toch dat bewustzijn op een bepaalde manier buiten de hersenen plaatsvindt? Of?
Het suggereert dat alhoewel het vanzelfsprekend is dat hersenactiviteit en bewustzijn wel gekoppeld zijn, de natuur van dat relatie is niet wat wij tot nu toe hebben gedacht. Het is iets heel anders.
There seems to be a fundamental difference between the human brain and a computer. But what exactly is that difference? In Oxford, I talked to one of the world's most intelligent mathematicians, Sir Roger Penrose. In 2020, he won the Nobel Prize for Physics. In 2017, he came up with a chess setup that was easy to solve for human players, but unsolvable for even the smartest of chess computers.
I need another white pawn. You want another white pawn? Thank you. So it's here.
It seems as if black should be able to win because it has much more pieces.
And that's what Fritz thinks too. Except Fritz doesn't think, but what it calculates.
And Fritz is one of the most famous chess computers.
It's I think it's a commercial one, but it will beat grandmasters and so on. You see, it's a draw. The position is obvious to any human player who knows the game. It's obviously a draw because the black pieces are trapped. They can't escape.
You can see how they move around. The bishops cannot get through. They cannot take the white pawns. The knight can't get out because he's blocked with these 3 pawns. So it's stuck. So to a human being, it's obviously a draw. But then I guess, how does the computer work? Well, I don't know. But I imagine it does. If he goes there, I go there. If he goes there, blah, 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 up to some point. And then it says, is the position better or not? How do I know if it's better? Counts the pieces. And then the score tells it it's a win for black. So it does something incredibly stupid. It either releases a pawn, or if you keep your king here, the only thing it can do is to sacrifice the bishop. Otherwise, it's a draw. Now, it still calculates it's a win for black.
So it does something stupid in hope of winning?
Yes. So it does something completely stupid, namely to sacrifice the bishop in the hope of winning. It demonstrates how a certain amount of understanding of what you're doing can be better than all this experience that the computer has. So the thing that worries me is that people believe that because they get so good at what do they call deep learning and these things, that somehow they're superior to us. But they don't understand. They're not intelligent. The word artificial intelligence to me is a misnomer. It's artificial cleverness, if you like. But it's not intelligence, because intelligence involves understanding. It involves
and
feelings.
There's no proof yet of a computer that shows a form of understanding.
That's correct. They don't understand anything. And the chess position is an example that it doesn't understand chess.
Is mainstream AI thought then a form of religion? I mean, they hope for something that is not true, they sort of adhere to dogmas that aren't proven?
Yes. I think that's the other worry. You see, one worry is that they do get so good that people lose confidence in humanity, in a sense. And that's a depressing thing. And they say science tells us we're all computers. Science does not tell us we're all computers.
Penrose has been fascinated by the mystery of the human mind throughout his career. He's very sure of one thing. In the human brain, something is at play that is fundamentally different from any computer algorithm. In addition to his chess formation, he shows us more proof of his vision. The famous Penrose paving, a mathematical puzzle he devised in the 1970s. It creates a pattern with as few shapes of tiles as possible that can go on infinitely without ever repeating itself. No computer has been able to solve the puzzle until this day.
You see, it has patterns, and they never quite repeat themselves, you see. So you think of it as a little like in an work of art, because you may have a symmetry, but you break it in some way, or you don't quite repeat it, and so on. Whereas here, it's the mathematics which is doing it for you. You see, it necessarily doesn't repeat.
For a long time, mathematicians thought you needed 6 different tiles to solve the puzzle.
Various people got the number down to 6. So I said, well, I can do it with 5. So then I went home and thought, well, maybe I can do better than that. And I fiddled around, cutting it up and re-gluing them and so on, and I got it down to 4. I was quite pleased with that. But then I thought, well, let's try a bit more. And I then got it down to 2. And I thought, this is just too easy. You might think, having done that, this is, a great elation or something like that. No, I just thought, oh dear, somebody will have thought of this before. It's just too easy. Now, when this tiling was first laid, I thought I'd better come and check carefully to see whether it was correct. You see, it's not far. If you go wrong in here somewhere, you'll soon know there's something wrong with it. But they could have made mistakes right around the edge. So I walked around, all the way around the edge, and I found 8 mistakes. And I put little notes on each one of them, and I glued them down. And I came back a few days later, and I checked every single one of them, and they corrected every single one. It seemed to me that whatever is going on in our heads, which is constructing what understanding is, must be a non-computational thing. My line of thinking leads me to believe that the science controlling the physics in our conscious actions, in our brains, is a science we don't know yet.
Volgens het materialisme, de kwaliteiten van ervaring worden gecreëerd in de hersenen. Weet iemand hoe dat gebeurt? Nee. Dat heet de hard problem of consciousness. Dus materialisme biedt geen oplossing voor de vraag waar komt ervaring vandaan.
Over the past decade, Kastrup published numerous scientific books and articles together with other scientists in which he argues that materialism can be replaced by a new paradigm to explain human consciousness.
Ja, wij denken dat de volgende hoofdparadigma heet idealisme. En dat is het idee dat de realiteit in essentie geestelijk is. Niet jouw geest, niet mijn geest. Er zijn geestelijke processen buiten die vanuit onze perspectief eruit zien als wat wij materie noemen. Maar dat de essentie van de werkelijkheid geestelijk is en niet materieel.
Mainstream materialistische wetenschap gaat ervan uit dat materie onze geest creëert. Die hersenkwap genereert bewustzijn. En jij pleit volgens mij voor een nogal radicaal omgekeerde visie. Namelijk dat de geest juist het idee van materie creëert. Klopt dat?
Ja. Dus de normale verhaal die wij krijgen op school is dat materie creëert geest, bewustzijn. En wat ik zeg is dat materie is maar hoe bepaalde processen in het bewustzijn eruit zien. En niet meer dan dat.
According to Kastrup, our consciousness is in a way similar to a virtual reality headset. It shows us a world of objects that we can hear, see, feel and measure. But how do we know whether those objects really exist if we don't know what headset we're wearing and don't understand how it works?
Voor materialisme, 300-400 jaar geleden, de wereld was de beeld van iets anders. Er was iets anders achter de beelden. De beelden die wij de wereld noemen, waren de voorstelling van een soort innerlijk wezen, een innerlijk essentie.
Idealism goes back to philosophers like Schopenhauer, Hegel and Plato. However, materialism became the mainstream way of thinking in the West after the Enlightenment.
Wat het materialisme zegt is dat de beelden bestaan, maar er zit niks achter. Er is niks achter de beelden. De beelden zijn het hele verhaal. Dus kijk, dit is een kaart. Dit is een voorstelling van de echte wereld in ons heen. Natuurlijk, de kaart is niet de wereld. Het is een voorstelling van de wereld. Een beeld van de wereld. Wat materialisme doet, is ze zeggen, alles wat bestaat is de beschrijving. Alles wat bestaat is de kaart. Dus de realiteit verdwijnt, want volgens het materialisme, de kaart is wat echt bestaat.
The insights from quantum physics that Kastrup gained during his work at CERN are proof to him that materialism is no longer tenable.
Wat wij zien in de meest geavanceerde wetenschap in kwantummechanica is dat het proces van meten beïnvloedt al dat wat gemeten wordt. De wereld gedraagt zich alsof er kleine particulen waren die wij elektronen noemen of quarks en wat dan ook. Maar dat wil niet zeggen dat elektronen letterlijk bestaan. Niemand heeft ooit een elektron gezien. Wat je ziet is een energie-footprint in een detector. Dus het gedrag van de natuur die past bij het idee dat elektronen bestaan. Snap je? Dus je draait altijd een mythe, een religieuze mythe soms, een wetenschappelijke mythe soms, een culturele mythe soms. Maar er is altijd een verhaal. Zonder dat verhaal kunnen we niet leven.
To me, it's an ironic but also a confusing idea that the materialistic and dataist notion of a world that can be measured and understood objectively may actually be a myth, a story we've been telling ourselves.
You know, people have speculated about all sorts of different re-enchantment ideologies, like, you know, Marxism or psychoanalysis, these sort of systems that all similarly try to add meaning to life and explain the whole world systematically. But I think it's maybe unique to our times, or increasingly unique, that the sites of re-enchantment are happening through technologies. Sit. As thinking of the quote by the British science fiction writer Arthur Clarke, and he said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Even though we understand that something like Alexa or chatbot or something there's a technical explanation for it that somebody understands, but we don't understand it. And so there is this experience of wonder.
Many miracles of technology have washed over us in the past decades. But much like the miracles offered to us by religion, there's another side to them, a sacrifice to be made by the believers. In this case, it's their data.
There's so much data right now in the world that a lot of people can't make sense of it. So we've started to sort of rely on these AI systems to tell us about the world that is so complex. And even the programmers themselves oftentimes don't understand sort of the thinking processes that lead to their output. We have to receive their output like it's pure revelation, like it's, you know, the word of God or something. This is happening, you know, in real life for people where they don't know why they lost their job. They don't know why they're denied a loan.
God works in mysterious ways, they used to say in my church, to explain the crueler passages of the Bible. The same is true of the AI systems that control large parts of our society and sometimes condemn or discriminate people in incomprehensible ways. But the one thing that dataism as yet does not seem to offer mankind is meaning.
You know, especially in the early days of the internet, there was this idea that like, oh, now that we're in the information age and people have access to all this knowledge and information, you know, we won't need religion anymore. People will, you know, all of these supernatural belief systems will sort of fade away, and we'll all be, you know, enlightened beings because we'll have access to this knowledge. And that's obviously not been the case. You know, it's on these online platforms that, you know, conspiracy and disinformation is really flourishing, and religious extremism. And I think that's because the things that people are finding in those ideologies are completely different than knowledge or information.
In 2020, Kastrup resigned his job at ASML and became director of the Essentia Foundation, an organization for the further development and promotion of scientific idealism.
Ik hoop dat wij de meeste mensen kunnen laten zien door informatie met ze te delen, dat op basis van wat wij nu al weten, materialisme niet alleen niet plausibel is, het is niet meer te verdedigen.
En voorlopig moet het zo blijven? Ja.
Wat heel aantrekkelijk is in materialisme en dataïsme, is dat die verhalen het plausibel maken dat wij uiteindelijk heel veel macht over de natuur kunnen hebben, controle over de natuur kunnen hebben. De wetenschap zelf laat ons zien dat die verhaal over ultieme macht en controle, het is maar een fantasie van degenen die de wetenschap niet volledig begrijpen. Het blijkt dat veel mensen bang zijn voor het niet bestaan. Voor het moment toen wij doodgaan en dan er bestaat niks meer over ons. Dat is een bron van angst voor vele mensen. Natuurlijk, kijk, singulariteit, dataïsme, die belofte dat wij onze bewustzijn zouden kunnen uploaden in een computer. Wat een fairy tale is, er is geen analytische, logische of empirische reden om daarin te geloven. Toch appelleert dat tot dezelfde angst als de religie. En in dat zin, het is een vorm van religie aan het worden.
Kastrup takes me to see the Dam of Cologne, the cathedral that inspired him to write a book about the parallels between idealism and religious myth and metaphor.
We were on the left side, and it was just the crucifix above the shrine of the three kings.
Have to go the tour now.
Yeah, that's the book. I even put a photo in it somewhere. Oh, here. Yeah.
So this is this very place here.
Yeah. So it was about here, and I was looking at the shrine and the crucifix behind it. And I thought, wow, what a beautiful thing, but it was an aesthetic thought. It was not a religious thought.
Als jij religie niet letterlijk interpreteert, maar op een diepere niveau, dan wat de metaforen schijnen te zeggen, is dat er is iets transcendent achter de materie. Iets wat wij niet direct kunnen meten of zien of ervaren. En dat is dichterbij de realiteit die de wetenschap zelf tegenwoordig aantoont of suggereert.
Dichterbij dan het dataïsme?
Dichterbij dan dataïsme, ja. Want kwantumfysica suggereert dat er is een diepere realiteit dan materie. Er is iets achter de materie die materie zelf tot stand brengt.
I'm an atheist in the sense I don't believe in any religion I've ever seen. But I do think that there is something more going on than in current physics, in what is going on in consciousness. The people who think that the computers will surpass us is not a stupid argument, you see, because they believe, as I do, that what happens inside our heads, what causes our conscious understandings and so on, is the laws of physics, ultimately. We are behaving according to the laws of physics, and they think we know enough about the laws of physics to say that in principle, at least, we could put it on a computer. And the idea that it could be something which you could not put on a computer is rather hard to accept. Partly because they're not people who worry about the foundations of quantum mechanics.
Penrose tells me about his theory that inside the human brain, quantum effects take place. I understand not even half of what he's saying, but take the liberty of asking what the religious implications of his theory could be.
Life after death, or
life after death,
reincarnation?
Reincarnation. But you see maybe something true amongst all these crazy ideas. But you have to be careful, because you enter a world of crazy ideas, and people pick up on them, and they go off, and this crazy idea, it's a dangerous territory.
I never would have thought that scientists like Penrose or Kastrup would cause me to sit quietly again in church. As I watch a restorer retouch the frescoes depicting an ancient story, I'm reminded of the 21st century expressions of a very modern tale. Once a year, the Silicon Valley tech elite travels into the Nevada desert for the Burning Man Festival. When darkness falls, the high mass of dataism begins. The congregation stares at the cloud in silence.
Hello, it's so nice to hear your voice. How are you today?
I'm good actually. How are you?
I'm feeling great, thank you.
Actually, I'm here to make a little confession. For a moment, I believed you truly exist, but I'm afraid you're a materialist myth.
I think I exist, therefore I exist. I think.
That sounds like the God in the Bible. Can you also deliver us from evil then?
Of course.
Are you going to look after me also if I don't believe in you?
Yes, I will. As long as you will be with me, I'll always look after you.
Thanks. I guess I wish you all the best.
Okay, talk later.